For a long time, we as women wanted it all. We wanted to work, build successful careers, run businesses and organisations. But we still want to have a family and be a present and hands on parent. But can we really have it all, or does something have to give? I've always been a working mother, and in my experience, we can have it all, but there is always a price to pay, be it emotionally, mentally, or physically. Well, hey there, my friends. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Property Management Podcast with That Property Mum. I'm your host, Kylie Walker, and thank you so much for joining me. Now, I took last week off. Well, not completely a week off to do absolutely nothing. Wouldn't that be nice? I took a week off to focus on a big project I'm working on. And I'm never one for doing anything in halves. You see, I'm writing a book, and not a business book, but a fiction story based on a real life event that happened to me. And I don't want to give too much away just yet, but stay tuned. You will be the first to hear about it as I progress closer towards publishing it. Well, fingers crossed I get to publish it. But what I really needed and why I took a week off was time to focus. I'm into the second draft phase and I was feeling a little overwhelmed and frustrated and really struggling mentally doing anything productive at all, if I'm honest, if I'm really honest. And I think as working mums, it can be really hard at times to put ourselves first and give ourselves what we really need. Sometimes all that is just asking for some help, or sometimes we need some extra space and thinking space or creative space. And sometimes we need a complete restart and reset. Now, my guest today is a pocket rocket from the West, Ashleigh Goodchild. She's an industry veteran with 3 young children. She's building her empire, helping one property manager at a time. Now, she's co-founder of one of Perth's most successful real estate agencies. She has a super successful podcast and new membership and events business called the PM Collective. Her motto is collaboration, not competition, and it has industry professionals from all over the country clamouring to work with her. Now, in this episode, we'll dive into all her secrets on how she juggles motherhood, parenting, and multiple businesses. So listen up. Thank you so much, Ash, for joining me on the Property Management Podcast. I am so excited to have you here. It's normally you interviewing me, so a bit of change of roles today. Now, before we dive in, can you please let our listeners know a little bit about yourself and how you got started in the industry?
Thanks for having me, Carly. So I started when I was around 18 and I actually was studying naturopathy, and I had so many prac hours to do that I thought, well, I'll go get myself a little job while I'm doing my prac hours, because I knew they were going to take me a while. And I got a job in a real estate office. And the thing is the real estate office that I started in, it was purchased by an air hostess and a pilot, and the owner of the company had passed away and they had just bought it as a business venture, and they had no idea on how to run it. And I was 18, they had no idea, I had no idea. And so along with them, I just helped them find their way. We just worked out how to look after this little office. And so as it turns out, accidentally falling into the industry, but just having to take a multitasking role to help them sort it out. So that's where I started.
Like so many people, you just end up here, and you've obviously one that's stuck with the industry. Now, I want to start off with a big question. I'm going to jump straight into it. How do you run multiple businesses, juggle a family, and keep your sanity? Can you share some of your secrets with us?
Well, the first secret is that I'm not always sane, and I do have meltdown moments. That's the first thing to know. And I find that I'm aware of when I have them. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I want people to take away, is that we all have the breakdown, some of us more frequent than others. For me, I probably have a little breakdown every maybe 4 to 6 months. And when I have that little breakdown, I actually had it the other day. I literally just said, I need to sit in my room. I don't want to see children. I don't want to speak to anyone. I just need my own space. and recognizing what things keep me happy in those moments. And very bizarre, but a can of Coke and a cheeseburger meal from McDonald's, a couple of the things that do boost my mood. So I think number one, identifying when you need that alone time is really important to juggling, multiple businesses, but also not being a perfectionist. And I like to refer to life and work as a bit of a tilt as opposed to a balance. And it's something that I learned a while ago. And there is no way to balance the two things together. For me, I think that's impossible, but it's a tilt. And some days the tilt goes in favor of my children. Some days the tilt goes in favor of work. And everyone knows that, and work know that if my family need me, then it tilts that way. But then equally, my children know that if I've got a really busy day and I can't make a school carnival because work has taken priority, they have been grown up to understand that that tilt shifts, sometimes in favor of them and sometimes in favor of work. And I make no apologies of the fact that sometimes it is in favor of work. And that's how I've brought my children up to understand that working hard is very, very important in life.
I think that is brilliant advice. A tilt, love it. So what is your best advice then for property managers or mums out there who are thinking, geez, I would love to start my own business, but I have a young family. How can I make it work?
I think that prepping and taking a couple of years to prep your plan and having it as a 5-year plan, it's not something that'll happen tomorrow. And interesting enough, I was actually just having this conversation with my kids on the way to school today, and they were talking about stay-at-home mums and, what a stay-at-home mum, what that would look like in our family. And I told them what that would look like and the pressure it would put on, their dad and other things like that. So we talked about that. And we also talked about how the reason why I started business, and I started it because I didn't want to be dependent on a partner for income. I wanted to have children and always have an income coming through when I chose to have them. So for me, starting the business at 23, I knew that I wanted to have children around 28, 29. So for me, it was a 5-year plan. I said to myself, I'm going to start my business so that in 5 years' time, when I'm ready to have children, I can have an income coming through, which is what I wanted. So I made that decision then. And so someone now that has children that wants to start their own business, probably the biggest thing I would say, and it's just because I'm passionate about it, is the personal branding and setting yourself up with a database and a brand that you personally own. So when I say that, I mean, LinkedIn is a very big one for me, and setting yourself up on LinkedIn with your database, your clients, your contacts, and setting that up so that when the time does come for you to set up your business, you've got all that groundwork. I think a lot of businesses these days, I see people think it's easy just to start up, thinking, oh, well, where I work at ABC Realty, I get lots of new business, and then they go out on their own and then they wonder why they're not getting any business. Well, it's because there is a background to it. So, sorry, long answer for the question, but ultimately setting yourself up with your own personal database on whichever social media platform excites you most, and that you own, and you've got that no matter what you want to do with your business.
I think one of the things with going out and starting your own business, it's not that you've just got time to grow the business either. You've got to then do the marketing. You've got to do the administration. You've got to do, managing a team or finding ways to get support where you need it. So it's not about just, when you're working for somebody else, you're in the business, you've got your time dedicated to growing the business. And I think that is a challenge that I found when I started our own business, was trying to juggle all of those different hats. And I can honestly say, hand on heart, I sat in every single seat in our business, except for being a selling agent. Although I did do lots of referrals, but I did absolutely every seat in our business in the early days. And I think the other thing that's important that I have found, and it took me a long time to realize this, was that we think we can do it all ourselves. Like for years, I didn't even have a cleaner. So I would spend my whole Saturdays cleaning. And I felt that I felt guilty and that I was not coping because I wouldn't ask for that help. And I'm finding that a very common theme with a lot of property managers that I've worked with over the years. Even asking for somebody to pick up the kids, your family or friends, or take your kids to sport after school. One of your friends is going to the same sport. Why not carpool? But we don't ask for that help. Do you see that as an issue as well?
Yeah, I call it outsourcing at home, and I find that I'm the same. I don't like asking for help. And even when it comes to dinner time, for me, I feel like, well, that's, very stereotypical, the mother's job in the house to do it. And we've got 6 kids in our house. And so it's a hard job. And it wasn't till recently that I've actually now started saying to my partner, listen, I need you to do 2 meals a week. Like, that's going to have to be your job now. Tuesdays and Thursdays, you cook dinner. And it was no problems. But like he said to me, Ash, you just got to ask. And I didn't ask before. And he said, but if you don't ask, it gets to a boiling point where then you're burnt out. And it could have all been resolved very easily with you just talking. And I think talking's such a big thing as well, even from a business point of view, and surrounding yourself in a community with like-minded people, it's that positive comparisons. And it's saying to people, well, how are you handling it? What do you outsource at home? Do you have a nanny? Do you have a housekeeper? Whatever it is, to realize that it's very, very normal. And I think for some silly reason, we don't think it's normal. And we also don't, hold sort of gratitude to people that do outsource a lot, because like, we shouldn't be looking down on people that, have a housekeeper or full-time chef or whatever. Good on you for realizing what you need to make sure that you're living your best life. For me, it is probably like HelloFresh or Uber Eats, and spending money on food. Even though I love to cook, I find the prepping of food is quite hard. So my next goal is to probably have someone who comes in who can do my food shopping, who can set up a couple of meals for the week, like a bit of a part-time housekeeper. That's the point I would like to be in my life, where I've got that. And I hold no sort of shame in saying that if that's what I need to live sanely, that's what we do.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I think there should be no judgment in whatever people need to do to make their lives tick and be the best versions of themselves, be the best parents, be the best property manager, business owner, whatever they need to do. Now, that was kind of a good segue into my next question, which is, as if running a property management business wasn't enough. Now, you've also got a couple of side hustles as well, which I'm sure they're probably no longer side hustles and are, knowing you, are growing into very successful, thriving businesses. So you've got the PM Collective, which has got a podcast and events and a membership side to it now. And I love your philosophy that it's all about collaboration and not competition. So tell us a little bit more about that and what you've got going on there.
Yeah, so that started out a couple of years ago, where we had a couple of people in the industry reach out to me and say, Ash, do you mind if I just catch up with you so that I can run past my goals this year? Or I'm having a few struggles at work. Can you help me with this? And so I said, sure, no worries. Ironically, I had about 5 people all at the start of like New Year's Day that had asked me. And I said, that's fine, but listen, I've got a bid on this month. Do you mind if you all come and see me together and we'll just like have a nice catch up and sort it out? They were all, yep, no worries at all. And then it ended up being, oh, can we do this next month? And can I please bring someone else? And we ended up having regular catch-ups. But then from that, we sort of thought, gosh, there's some people that actually don't get an opportunity to get out of work and have these discussions. How about we do a podcast so that everyone can hear these conversations that we're having and these dilemmas we're having, and it can reach basically a wider audience. So then we started doing the podcast. And then it came down to the fact that in WA, we don't actually get a lot of conferences and training and nice big events like you guys do over East. So then I was like, okay, I'll organise it for us, and I'll, fly, jet over from Queensland, and we'll have this great big event. And that was fantastic as well. So it was just, I feel like I'm very much just a driver in the seat. Even though I founded PM Collective, I'm just a driver, and I've got a big community of people that say, Ash, we're really struggling with employment at the moment. What can we do? Okay, guys, let's get into the high schools and start doing some career planning for these year 12s. Or Ash, we're struggling with this problem. Okay, let me facilitate that. So that's where I find my position, and my passion is just really being the voice of the property management industry in WA. And because I've got the motivation and the energy behind me to do it, I feel like I'm a great person to facilitate that. And also because my business, in the real estate business, I've had it for 17 years, and I have a great team that look after it themselves. So they know that by them looking after and manning the office allows me to do better things for the industry. So it sort of just all works really nicely together. My staff help me to give me more time to help the industry. And that's really what it's all about, and playing to our strengths. And that's what I feel like I'm doing.
You're doing an amazing job. What, on that topic then, what are some of the biggest struggles that the industry is facing at the moment? And I guess for working mums in the industry, seeing as that's our topic today, is talking about working mums, what are you finding at the moment are some of the struggles that's taking place?
I think that people don't have the ability to, and I can't even say this word right, compartmentalize. Compartmentalize? Do you know what I mean?
Compartmentalize, yes.
Sorry, I've never been able to get the word right. Yeah. I don't think people have the ability to do that. And I feel, and what people might criticize me for saying this, I think people take the job too personally at the end of the day, and they don't take the emotion out of the situation. And it's actually a really hard thing to teach people. Stop being emotional about it. Stop taking it so personally. Stop answering your phone in the afternoon or, after 5. I don't think it's as easy as just telling people to do it. I really actually genuinely believe you either do it or you don't do it. And I feel like I think that people sweat the small stuff a lot. And to give you an example, we had a couple of events last year in property management, a couple of deaths, a couple of fires. And I remember the property manager who had the death, she just said, Ash, I can't do anything till I get the death certificate. So I've written down my list of things I need to do. As soon as that death certificate comes through, this is my next job, that's my next job. She wrote a list. Nothing emotional about it. However, another property manager could quite have easily taken this as a really, really traumatic experience. And I use that as a good example by someone who would take that event as very stressful and personally, and then another property manager who has gone, can't do much about it now, this is what I'm going to have to do, and was able just to not bring any emotion into it. It was a job, it was a process, and I'm getting that done. And I don't want to say that, to be unemotional, but just recognizing that you can't do much more. Or if there's an argument between an owner and a tenant, okay, I've tried to negotiate, guys, I'm in the middle of it. I'm just the messenger. If we can't come to an agreement, these are our 2 options. And it's just a bit more matter of fact. And I feel like that's probably the biggest problem we're having. And I think that talking as well, like I think the burnout is quite big in the industry, but talking to people about that and having tips of what to do if you are feeling burnt out, recognizing 3 things that make you instantly happy, I'm very big on. And recognizing if, I've got staff that say to me, Ash, I'm really feeling mentally drained this week, so I'm going to book a sickie in on Friday, and that's no problems at all. So being able to be open enough to to recognize it is probably important. And if you need to have a day off, have a day off.
I absolutely totally agree with you. And I recently just did an episode, I think last week's episode was on burnout in property management. And I talked about my own experience with burnout as well. So that's episode 3, if anyone wants to go back and take a look at that as well. And we're talking about the compartmentalization. I'm not even sure if I've said it right, but that I totally think that a lot of that comes down to property managers' lack of self-esteem, lack of self-belief, and trying to sometimes, I think, prove themselves. Trying, I guess, making the job a bit more important. You know, giving themselves extra value is what I'm trying to say, by making sort of smaller things into bigger things. And I think they definitely don't need to do that. They definitely, the work needs to be done definitely on confidence and self-esteem, and certainly around not taking issues that you have absolutely no control over, personally as well. So I think that's some really great advice that you have shared there.
Another thing I was just going to add into that as well is that there's so many different positions within the property management space that you can go into. And if you find dealing with conflict really, really difficult and it's just not in your personality to do, then look at doing something different in the department and say that to your boss. Just say, listen, this isn't for me dealing with this conflict. You could look at trust accounting, you could look at inspections, ingoings, outgoings, routines. Maybe you do admin work, maybe you're better doing BDM work. But if you're not enjoying it and you're not good at it, there's another 5 different types of positions that will suit your personality. So just don't be afraid just to say, listen, it's just not for me.
I think that's been a good theme throughout our conversation is communication. It is, from what you need at home to what you need in your office, communicating and having the confidence and the courage to just speak up. You're not going to get in trouble for it. And don't be afraid to have your own voice. At the end of the day, you spend so much time in an office. You want to be happy there. You don't want to be miserable. So I think that's, everyone communicate your needs wherever you can. Now, I love personal development. And so what is one thing that you can share with the listeners that is either a book or a podcast or some sort of an action item that they could take away and do immediately after listening to this?
So my favorite book at the moment is Emma Isaac's book. Gosh, I'm just trying to think of the name. It's her most recent one. It's The New Hustle. Have I told you about that book before?
No, I don't know if you've told me about that one. You've told me a
gosh.
few books, but no, not that one.
The New Hustle was a big eye-opener for me. I got referred to it to read it by actually a property manager over in Queensland who said, Ash, I'm reading this book. I haven't ever met this lady before. I speak to her sometimes on Zoom, but she said, Ash, you've got to read this book. It's awesome. She said it was so good. She went out and bought a hard copy book and started highlighting. And I think the reason why that's my biggest takeaway and highlight for this year was because it talks about your own space, where quite often sometimes I feel lazy if I was to have a day off, or actually I've never had a day off, but if I was to have a day off, I'd feel lazy. If I wasn't working, I would feel lazy. If I wasn't busy, I was feeling lazy. And even if I went for a walk, I would still think, okay, I'm going to put a podcast on to listen to, so I feel like I'm, still doing something. And this book was very much about not glorifying the word busy and glorifying people who have free time, because the free time allows your mind, and I think we've talked about it before, but like your nervous system, space and time to be creative and to think. And when you are always like busy, which is such a silly word, but you don't give your mind or your body that time to think and just process and become creative. So I think the book teaches you to glorify that space. So if someone says, what are you doing today? And you say, I'm having a day in bed, instead of, people thinking, oh, well, aren't you being lazy? You're going, no, actually good on you for having a day in bed. We should be doing more of this and praising each other for having that alone time. So that's my biggest thing.
Yeah, I think that's really good. That I will definitely go and buy myself a copy of that because I have definitely lived in that philosophy for a long time that I have to be busy, doing, go, 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 go. And it's probably only been since I've had a bit of a heart scare that I have actually stepped right back. I do allow myself day when I'm not feeling well. Days of I've just actually had a week in Sydney. I took a week off. I was writing a book. It wasn't that I wasn't doing anything, but I just was feeling overwhelmed and stressed and just couldn't think, couldn't get focused, couldn't get productive. And the best thing I did, I took myself away for a week and yeah, worked through a lot of stuff. So, and I did have a lot of quiet time, just walking on the beach and with no AirPods in, no podcasts, just. So I've got a couple of episodes of your podcast actually to catch up on. So how can our listeners connect with you?
So I am big on LinkedIn is probably personally a favourite for keeping in touch. So that's just Ashleigh Goodchild or Perth Property Manager on LinkedIn and also on Instagram. But I'm pretty easy to find, Carly. You can just put Ashleigh Goodchild in the in Google and find me, and I do answer everything. So I'm very, very happy for anyone just to reach out or touch base or have any questions. Definitely just hit me up.
And the podcast is the PM Collective.
Yes, PM Collective.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ash, for joining me on this episode.
Lovely. Thank you for having me.